Welcome back everyone. For today's video we are looking at a game that was played in the Titled Tuesday event held on chess.com on Tuesday evening, January 9th. Now Titled Tuesday is a very prestigious event. I've played in it many times. I've actually won the most out of anybody, but nonetheless it provides a great opportunity for title players of all different levels to compete against the absolute best. Now there's a very interesting game which I played tonight against none other than Levy Rosman, also known as Gothamchess on YouTube. So without further ado, let's jump right into the action. So this game was played in the second round of Titled Tuesday on January 9th, the late evening edition. So I opened with e4. Levy decided to play e6, playing the French. Now I decided to play this move d3. Now while I was streaming on Twitch, live streaming this event, I did realize that I probably should have played the move d4, and the reason that I should have played d4 is because Levy actually played in the I Am Not a GM event a while back, and one of the variations that he was playing in his match against the international master Greg Shahade was his classic Rubinstein variation with knight f6, bishop g5, bishop e7, takes, and g takes f6 followed by b6. Now in that match, Levy was actually getting very bad positions with this opening. In fact, he was losing in quite a few games, but due to the time situation, Greg being a little bit older and Levy being able to conjure up a lot of tricks when the time got very low, he actually ended up winning most of these games. So during this game, as soon as I played d3, I realized that I probably should have played d4 and gone into the Rubinstein variation, but nonetheless I decided to play d3. So we get d5, and now I go knight d2. Now this is a very flexible setup for me here. What I'm aiming for is play knight f3 followed by g3 and bishop g2, which of course is aiming for the classic King's Indian attack. So Levy plays knight to f6, I go knight f3, he plays g6, I go g3. Now normally in the King's Indian attack, the way you reach is after bishop e7, g3 castles, bishop g2, c5 castles, knight c6. White plays this move rook e1, and after say a5, e5, knight d7, white goes h4, knight f1, and bishop f4. But Levy decides to play the move g6 instead to fianchetto the bishop to g7. So here I play the move g3. Levy plays bishop g7, now I go bishop to g2, and now Levy castles, I castle, and he plays this move a5. Now in true form, I decided to play the move e5 here, going for the King's Indian attack setup after knight d7 and rook e1. Now one of the reasons I really like the King's Indian attack is a very easy, very flexible setup for white. You want to play h4, h5, you want to go knight f1 and bishop f4. Now just to make some random moves to illustrate the theme, you want to go knight f1, eventually you want to go h4. Let's say black plays knight a6, you go bishop f4, over protecting the pawn, and then you go knight h2 with ideas like knight g4, h5, and in general it's very easy to play. Now the famous former world chess champion from America, Robert James Fisher, also known as Bobby, played this setup many times with some resounding victories. So after rook to e1, Levy goes a4 here. Now I play a3. Very important move, by the way, because after say knight f1, a3, b3 here, black can play something like f6, trying to rip open this long diagonal for the dark square bishop on g7. So I play a3 to stop him from going there. He now goes c5. I play knight f1. He plays knight c6, and now black is pressuring the pawn on e5 with these knights as well as the bishop. Now if black were to play knight c6 right away, this would be a mistake, because now white can play d4, building this nice central chain of pawns. Let's say b6, c3 for example, and white has this massive to connect 4, and white now will proceed to play h4, knight f1, knight h2, bishop f4 with the classic King's Indian attack ideas. So Levy plays c5, knight f1, knight c6. Now I go bishop f4 to protect the pawn on e5 with the bishop, the knight, and the rook. Levy plays b5, and now I go c3. Now initially during the game I thought about simply playing h4 here, but I was actually a little bit worried that after b4 in this position, black is maybe going c4 here, trying to open up the queenside, and I thought that c3 was a little bit more prudent, because now if black plays b4, I can play this move c4. If black takes, for example, after takes, now this long diagonal is open for the light square bishop on g2 down the road. Whereas if I were to play the move h4, b4, and then c4, black can play en passant with pawn takes pawn, and sure, I can still go for the idea with c4, but it will take me more time, and therefore I decided to play c3. Levy plays this move queen to b6, and now I go h4. He plays the move b4, and now I play this move c4, trying to open up the scope for this light squared bishop. On top of trying to open up the scope, what I also would like here is after say black plays d4, I can put this knight on d2 followed by knight to e4, and I have all these jumps to f6 and d6, and white is probably a little bit better. Computer, of course, hates this, and in fact, I'm actually a little bit shocked that I missed this during the game. I could have traded on b4 and just taken the free pawn on a4 here, and after takes, knight c5, queen to d1, or queen c2, white is actually just up a pawn and should be much better. Now, of course, this was the evening title Tuesday, so I was a little bit tired as I was playing the game, but nonetheless, it's actually a little bit shocking that I missed this idea. So instead, I played c4 here. Levy plays b takes a3, and now I play the move b takes a3. He goes queen to b3, and now I play this move queen to e2, which is simply wrong. Now, if this were a classical game, probably I would use some time, play something like takes and knight to e3, trying to go after this pawn in the center, and computer gives white a very, very big advantage here. But in a blitz game, you're sort of stuck in between two different possibilities. You either use a lot of time and think on a critical move, or you try to play intuitively, move in a couple of seconds on every single move. So in this case, I'm trying to play very intuitively because I'm up by a minute on the clock against Levy, but more importantly, I have general easy plans to follow if I play this move queen to e2 with h5, knight h2, knight g4, or knight to e3 down the road to pressure the pawn on d5. So Levy goes bishop to a6 here, and now I play this move knight d2, and he goes queen c3. Now, during the game, I actually thought that after rook b1, maybe I could trap this queen on b3 after queen c3 with something like bishop d2, but black has a very nice in-between move, knight to d4, forking the queen and the knight at the same time. If I take the queen, I lose my queen, and I actually end up losing the game because now I lose the bishop on c3. Additionally, if I trade the knights on d4, now black will simply capture this pawn on e5 on the next turn because I cannot go f4 here since that would put my king in check. So I play the move knight 1 d2, Levy plays queen c3, and now I play this move rook c1, which is a mistake. What I should have played here was something that's very thematic in the king's Indian attack, which is I should have traded on d5 and played this move pawn to e6, attacking the knight on d7 and the pawn on f7, and white is actually quite a bit better here. If black plays, say, pawn takes pawn, queen takes, now you lose on the knight on c6 and the game. And if you play a move like knight b6, for example, now white can trade and play queen e6, followed by this move knight g5, which opens up the scope for this light square bishop on g2, and once again, white is in prime shape to win the game. Instead, I play the move rook e to c1, Levy goes queen a5, and now I play h5. Now, these moves might not be the absolute best, but the one thing you'll notice is that I'm moving very quickly. I'm putting a lot of pressure on Levy's clock here, and it's not an easy position to play. So Levy goes rook a b8, and now I play this move queen e1, which is a horrible move here. I actually don't know why I played it. What I should have played was h6, and after bishop h8, once again, I should have traded the pawns on d5 and gone e6. But I didn't play this move, and I remember why. During the game, I actually thought black could go rook to e8, and I didn't realize that I could take on f7, checking the king and the rook. If black takes with the rook, then you lose the rook on e8 and the game. And when you take with the king, now I have knight to g5, once again opening up this long diagonal for the light square bishop. And after king g8, bishop takes d5. It's simply GG. Why not? And if black were to go king f6, you have knight h7. If king f5, there's bishop h3, which is checkmate. And if king f7, same thing. Take on d5, check. Block, queen takes e6, and black loses the game. So instead, I play this move queen to e1, and now Levy plays rook f8, which takes away any possibility of me trading on d5 and pushing to e6 because the rook will capture the pawn. So here I play bishop h3, which is actually a fairly serious mistake. What I should have played here was h6 first, and after bishop h8, then played something like rook b1, maybe bishop h3, but I needed to force the bishop back to h8 right away. Because when I go bishop to h3, what Levy could have played here is takes on c4, and after I take, for example, now there's knight to d4. If I trade the knights, this pawn on e5 is very weak. If I don't trade the knights, black can go bishop b7, pressuring the knight on f3, and there's also rook coming to b2, creating the classic kebab on the second rank. So I go bishop h3, and now Levy plays this very passive knight to f8, which is a serious mistake here. So after knight to f8, now I play h6, Levy goes bishop to h8, and I play this move queen to e3. Now, surprisingly, the computer does not give white a very big advantage here because black can play this move d4, which happens in the game. Now, what I was playing on in this whole game is I was sort of playing on the basic theme here that if black, say, moves the rook to a8, I can take on d5, win a pawn on c5, and probably should win the game. If black plays knight d7 back, then after pawn takes pawn, you can't recapture because you lose the horse, and white will win as well. And when Levy went d4 here, I now thought, wait, but I can go queen e4, and eventually I can probably force this knight to e4, and surely I will win the game. So Levy goes bishop b7, now I go queen to e2, an important move here because now there's no rook to b2, whereas if I played queen to e2 right away, black can infiltrate and stack the other rook on the only open file. So I go queen to e4 here, bishop b7, now queen to e2, intending to follow up with knight e4. Here Levy plays knight to e7, and now I go knight to e4. Levy takes, I take back here, and I'm feeling very good about myself because now I've got the two bishops. I can eventually try to reroute one of the other knights to the center, and also there are no threats on this long light square diagonal since black has traded the bishop. So Levy goes queen a8, I go queen e2. I could trade the queens here, and probably after knight g5, knight e4, it's still preferable for white. But with Levy being so low on the clock here and the possibility of attacking ideas on the dark squares, there's no reason to trade the queens. So I play queen e2. Levy goes knight d7. Now I go knight to g5. Here he plays knight to f5. Slight mistake. Knight c6 would be a better move here to pressure the pawn on e5, and I proceed with knight e4. Now Levy plays knight takes e5, and I play this move bishop g2. Now I would love to take the pawn on c5, but if I take on c5, there's knight to f3 check, and suddenly black has this menacing knight protected by the queen on this diagonal. And say I go king to f1 after e5, black is pushing e4. The bishop is very, very weak on f4, and black probably is winning the game. So I go bishop g2 instead, trying to create some fossils and discovered attacks on the queen. I also have pressure on the other diagonal towards the knight on e5 and the rook on b8. So we have queen a5 from Levy here, and now I play this move knight to d6, which is a serious mistake. Now knight d6 was simply based on a miscalculation by me. What I should have played was g4 first, and after knight h4, knight d6, now I attack the rook. I'm attacking the knight on e5 with the queen and the bishop, and it should just be winning easily for me. Instead I play knight d6, takes, and I'm thinking here, well, this is an easy win. If black plays knight f5, I'll trade the bishops here on h8, or wait, actually maybe I'm insane. Sorry, if knight f5, I take on b8, and after takes here, now I can play something like rook b1, and I simply have an extra rook for a knight. And if black were to play this move bishop takes e5, for example, after takes, maybe this is just bad. For some reason, I remember during the game, I thought I could go g4 attacking the knight. Knight moves, you get the classic lolly mate with queen g7, but black can actually just take the pawn on h6, and he's up 2 pawns. So this was a very serious mistake by me. I didn't actually realize that. But on top of this bishop e5, knight f5, Levy finds another line, which is also quite reasonable, with queen to d8 here, because now when I trade on h8 and go queen to e5 check, black can play f6, again stopping the lolly on g7. However, in this situation, after queen takes c5, while black can bring the knight back to hit the pawn on h6, I have a passed c pawn, which is going up the board very quickly. So here I go queen a7, again moving extremely fast to try and keep the pressure on the clock. Levy plays queen e7, I take on a4, he takes on h6, but now I start pushing p with c5, c6, c7, and when you combine that with the fact that I also have an a pawn that can go down the board very quickly, it's very hard for black to play here, because black has these 4 pawns on the king side, but none of the pawns are advanced, so it's very, very hard to get any kind of attacking possibilities. So Levy goes rook f8. Now I play c6 here. He goes knight f5, and now I go rook a b1, an attempt to trade off some of the heavy pieces, because I know that with these 2 pawns on the opposite side of the board relative to the black king, it will give me great winning chances. So Levy plays queen d6 here, and now I play rook takes rook. He goes queen takes rook, not rook takes, by the way, because after rook takes, I can go queen to a7, followed by c7, and black will have to sack some material to stop me from promoting the c pawn. So he goes queen b8. Now I play queen to c4, creating the double stack, pressuring the pawn on e6, but also supporting the pawn thrust to c7 as well. Levy plays queen d6. Now I go c7, just ignoring the pawn on a3, because if black plays queen takes a3, I can simply move the rook. There's bishop b7 in play. There's also queen takes e6 in play, and black is struggling. So Levy goes queen e5 here, a very creative move, and now I play queen c5. Now this is a move that I use quite a bit of time. I spent 15 seconds, and the reason is what I realized: if I were to play something like a4, black might be, or not a4, sorry, if I were to play something like queen b4, which was one of the moves I considered, maybe black can sack the knight with knight takes pawn, followed by knight e2 to fork the king and the rook. If I take, there's queen e3 check, hitting the king and the rook and winning the game. So I spent quite a bit of time here trying to figure out what was the easiest way to play it, and so I played this move queen c5, and the reasoning was quite simple. While it's not the absolute best move, it forces black to trade the queens off here, and in an endgame with the 2 wide peepos on the a and the c file and the king so far away here from this queen side, black cannot save the game. So Levy trades the queens. He goes knight d6, which stops me from playing bishop b7, but now I play the move rook c6, attacking the knight here, and he plays the move knight e8. Now he could have played knight to b5 as well, But after a4 attacking the knight, knight takes pawn a5, the knight is pinned in a manner very similar to the game. So Levy goes knight e8 instead, but now I play rook takes pawn on e6. He has to play knight takes. If he takes with the rook, you lose the horse in the game. And after knight c7, now I play the move rook to c6 here, pinning the knight on c7. And there are many reasons this is losing, but quite simply what I can do is if black were to play h6, I can go rook to c4, h5, and then bishop b7, attacking the rook on c8. If you don't move the rook, you lose the rook in the game. And if you move the rook, I take the knight and I have an extra bishop on b7. So Levy plays the move rook to b8 here, and now I play rook takes knight on c7. And due to the time situation, I don't remember if Levy resigned here or he lost on time. Either way, I have an extra bishop on the board, and it's completely winning for white. So Levy resigns this game. This moved me to 2 out of 2 in the event. Unfortunately, I was not able to keep it together. I would lose the final game to Danil Dubov, and that would eliminate me from contention for the prize money. But nonetheless, I thought you guys would enjoy this game because it's a very instructive game. It's one of those sorts of openings with the kings in the attack, which I think makes a lot of sense for lower rated players to play, simply because you have very free-flowing ideas and you try to attack your opponent. So on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap of my win from the second round against Levy Rosman, also known as Gothamchess, in this evening title Tuesday on January 9th. If you have not already subscribed to the channel, make sure to smash that subscribe button below, and I will be back soon with some more great YouTube-only content. Have a great evening, everybody. See you guys soon. Bye.